Alright, welcome to Occult Topics with the Professor, where this is the follow-up to the initial video detailing the tarot card, the Fool. We have here the Fool, and so what I wanted to do in that first video was to read most of this book, Paul Foster Case's The Tarot, A Key to the Wisdom of the Ages. Didn't have time, so the goal right now is we're going to read through this entire book. We're going to get to it. So I just want to recap some of the things that was discussed in the last episode in terms of the Fool card. The Fool is your journey. I'm going to personalize and say my journey through the major arcana as well as the entire tarot deck. For those who are new to my channel, Occult Topics with the Professor. Oh, also, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and that way we can keep this thing going, and it works out better for me as well as others who are seeking this information. So again, the Fool card. What I did, I kept it with me. Actually, I used it as a bookmark while I was rereading this book, Kabbalah Magic by Ophir. And what I found out was that whenever you double back on information, you always look at it with new eyes. And when I initially read this book, of course I thought it was good because I had the PDF and I went ahead and bought the actual book. However, what I realized was that the information hit me harder, it hit different. I noticed that in certain places where Ophir was being subtle, I saw that actually that was a clue. But what I personally gained just from contemplation on the Fool card was that I am the Fool. This is my journey. The Fool is actually a polarity from Kether down to Malkuth. If you, when we read through the book of symbols, the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Symbols, we learned that the Fool is actually a correspondence or a polarity to the king. The king wears a crown, and Kabbalah that would be Kether. So the Fool's descent into matter, into density, it could actually be applied to the hero's journey, because his descent is not a one-way trip. It's going to be a round trip. And the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell, it shows that the hero begins this journey and he's put on a circle. The Fool card is symbolized by the number 0 in a circle. The circle represents spirit, wind, air, etc. And so his descent into matter is not a one-way trip. He will go and return from whence he came. And so another thing that stuck with me with the Fool card was the dog. I looked at the dog as an anagram for God. God is beckoning at his feet, you know. But I forget which book it was. But one of the books in the last, one of the books I used for references and correspondences stated that the dog actually represents the fact that he has tamed these wild animalistic aspects or materiality. So he's already in control of where he's headed to, which is the denser material realm. If you look at the tarot card, you see that he's stepping. It looks like he's about to go off a precipice. You know, he's stepping off a ledge. However, his focus is on what's above. Now, what you'll notice also that I gather is that these colors are indicative of the Kabbalistic tree of life. You see here that the sky itself is actually yellow, and so that will correspond to Kether. So we look at these things, and it was also discussed. We also went through it in the first episode that Kabbalah and Tarot goes hand in hand. So this is what we're going to get to. However, before I get into this reading of Paul Foster Case's The Tarot, A Key to Wisdom, I wanted to show some of the books that I'm reading and also some of the books that I'll be reading online. Now, I already showed this book, Ophio's The Art and Practice of Kabbalah Magic. This is actually a deceptively good book. On first read, I thought he was oversimplifying everything, but I realized on my second, by now it's probably my third read, I realized that the subtleties and the things he questions are actually hints into the deeper meanings. Now, this is a book that I've actually had for about 4 years. Practical Astrology, Self-Transformation Through Self-Knowledge, Kabbalah, Tarot, and Consciousness by Samael Onweyo. This is an awesome book. I do intend to eventually get into this book. We're going to read it. We're going to read it on here. Oh, okay, real quick, as a side note. Then again, this is a book that I've had it for years. I read it, but I'm ready to come back to it fresh eyes. What I wanted to point out is something I forgot. You notice in here, I have all of these images. Here's an image of Samael Onweyo, another image of him. Here's an image of, the best I could say is a Piscean image, because Tarot. Here's another one with Moses raising the brazen serpent. I'm gonna give this as a tip to any serious reader, any serious researcher. The best thing to do is you pack your book with images of power. And the reason why you do that is because these things are gonna play on the backdrop of your subconsciousness. It's what you're gonna focus on. So what I do, print these images out, I use them as bookmarks, stuff them in books, and usually while I'm reading, I set them out and let that be like my subconscious lesson. Actually, what I just realized, need you to bear with me, I don't even have any incense burning. So let me go get my incense, I'll get right back, and we're going to pick up where I left off at in terms of the different books that I'm going to be covering, reading on this YouTube channel, as well as myself. So one moment. Triggered my memory to the fact that I didn't have any incense burning. Well, in J.C. Cooper's and an illustrated encyclopedia of symbols, you'll find that incense represent essentially prayers to the divine, prayers to your higher self, to spirit. It is a way of locking yourself into a locale, for lack of a better word. And when I say locking yourself into a locale, it is setting the stage. So if every time you begin something spiritual, when you're doing your research, when you want to attain these higher levels and higher degrees of gnosis, what you definitely want to do is set the stage. And so what you're doing is, number one, you're letting your subconscious mind know that, hey, I'm about to get that work in. But also, you will begin to associate these scents and these aromas with serious research and study, etc., etc. All right. So something in me said, you tripping. You haven't even fired up the incense yet. So now I got the incense going. You know what? I'm going to show you what incense I'm burning. I love it. I love it. Hold on one second. I'll get that incense. Delays and interruptions. So what the incense that I'm burning right now is the Psi Flora. Let me see how many I have. Ooh, down low. I only have one left, but you'll see how thick it is. It burns generally. I can get one to burn for at least an hour before I have to go back back and get another one. My intentions were to actually use my chakra incense, because today, even though it's Friday, I'm working on my sacral chakra. However, we're gonna make it do what it do. I like this smell, I like this incense. So, without further ado, the first book that I mentioned was The Practical Astrology by Samael Aoweor. Now, this is a book that I don't even have anything bad to say about. This is an awesome book. I actually referenced it in my book, The Occult Meaning of Masonry of Symbols and the Chakra System. So I'm going to go back over this, most likely on my own. If you want a good comprehensive understanding of this book, and you're not a reader, or you read it already but you still would like a deeper understanding, I'm going to recommend Travis Mages. He read through this book, gave me great insights just from his breakdown and the level and depth of his research. I have nothing but the ultimate respect for Travis Mages' work because of the depth and how he connects the dots. So if this is a book, if Kabbalah is something that you're interested in, number one, you should have this book. If you're, say you work a lot of hours, whatever might be going on with you, you don't have time to physically read, go over to Travis Mages' YouTube channel and listen to it. You will not be disappointed. Another book which we will definitely read is The Pictorial Key to the Tarot by Arthur Edward Waite. Of course, he's the co-author of the Rider-Waite deck. Now, another book that I haven't read, and so I will share this experience with you all, is On the Mystical Shape of the Godhead, Basic Concepts in the Kabbalah, Gershom Scholem. This is a book that I've been looking forward to reading for a long time. I just haven't got to it, and that we will do together. Another book that I definitely intend to read on here during the Tarot course is The Shining Paths, an experimental journey through the Tree of Life, a unique collection of magical pathworking based on the 32 paths of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Tarot? Well, each of these paths represent a different Tarot card. The 10 Sephirah, each of the Sephirah represent the minor arcana. The paths represent the major arcana. That much I do know. And anybody listening, I am not putting myself off as an adept in terms of Tarot. In the past, I've had just the barest working knowledge. I've actually, whenever I came across a Tarot correspondence, usually I would just look it up in the moment. Okay, I understand, and move on. So the purpose of all of this is, I want to have a working knowledge. I don't want to remember it. I don't want to just memorize it. I don't want to just be able to recite it. I want it to be embedded into my psyche. So this is what I'm doing for myself. The next book, which is dope, is Robert Wayne's The Kabbalistic Tarot. Now, I started reading this book and I put it down when I decided to do this series on YouTube. And the reason why I put it down, because I said I am not going to digest another book in terms of Kabbalah and Tarot, or anything else in terms of Tarot, and I don't have a working knowledge, something that I can pull from my own database, what it means to me personally. So that's what I'm doing. And also, you'll find that most of these books, if you get the right ones, they have incredible visual images. We're all visual. So you need to, if you have the PDF, that's always cool. If you can't afford the books, because I've been there, what you'll find is that once you set your mind to getting these books, the money for the books will come. Trust and believe. I also want to say to those who can't afford the books, work busy lives, and you wonder, how am I going to read all these PDFs? Or if you're like me and you wear glasses, staring at their screen is killing your eyes. What you do is you download one of those apps that text to talk. And so once you find that, I'll go through several. Every time I delete it and get it back, I go through several. You'll find one that's comfortable for you, that you like. What you do is you play it like it's music and you listen to the book. So even if you work 10, 12 hours a day, you put it, you play it, especially now because we have the AirPods, we have these Bluetooths that don't have wires. So for me, when I first started this practice, I used to have the wired earplugs in my ear. Now it's even better. Your phone can be one place, the AirPod can be in your ear. And what I suggest is if you work, especially if you're like operating heavy machinery or you're around a lot of people and you have to listen to other dialogue, don't worry about it. Turn your volume down low so that really you have to strain to hear it. And the reason why I say that is because you want to make it a conversation between the information in your subconscious mind. Now, will you still have to go back and read it? Yes. But what happens is, for me, because I'll listen to the same book 2 or 3 times. It might be a 4-hour PDF. It might be a 4-hour read. I'll listen to it 2 or 3 times in the same day. Maybe even listen to it again the next day. What happens is the information becomes your own without you even realizing it. You'll actualize this information and make it your own, which is what you want to do in the end. Another book that I'm definitely going to be reading is the Mystic Test Book, or The Magic of the Cards, giving the mystic meaning of these wonderful and ancient emblems and their relationship to the heavenly bodies under all conditions, with rules and processes in tarotology, fortune-telling readings by Only H. Richmond. This is a book that I got because it treats the average playing deck in the same way that you would treat tarot. Another book that I definitely intend to read on my own or on here, I don't know yet, because it's kind of a thick book. Let's see how many pages it is. Oh, not too many, 355. That's including the bibliography and all that. So maybe I will. This will definitely be in chunks, won't be in one piece. And that is The Tarot of the Bohemians, Absolute Key to Occult Science by Pops. This came highly recommended to me by somebody that I respect. And again, I just want to say that no, I am not a tarot magus. My goal in learning tarot isn't so I can divine someone's future or even my own future. It's just to deepen my understanding of self. And I guess by gaining a deeper understanding and knowledge of self, of course, that allow me to predict the winds of change in my own future. Now, another book that I am very excited about and that I will be reading is Layman Hissey, Keys to Inner Space. When I read this book, I was struck by the fact that a lot of people who I consider to be my teachers or mentors, some living, some not living, I found pieces of what they've said in this book. From C. Freeman L. to Bobby Panic From C. Freeman L. to Bobby Hemmett to Brother Panic. I found some awesome information in here. So, without further ado, let's get it cracking. Now what I'm going to do is, because this book, I started reading it and I stopped when I realized I wanted to read it live. This book has an awesome diagram at the very beginning. So what I'm going to do is pull that up, because I know it's coming. About this diagram, I'm just going to replace the book with the diagram. Doesn't make any sense to you now, we're going to get into it. And so bear with me, because normally I don't do all these theatrics. I just read on my own. Now you see the book opens up with this diagram. It's called The Key of the Cosmos in Numbers. This is by Paul Foster Case, circa 1927. And then here, let's see, focus it in here. I'll read it to you. I see it's kind of bad on the screen. Other books by him are The Book of Tokens, Tarot Meditations, The Great Seal of the United States, its history, symbolism, and message for the new age, highlights of tarot with coloring instructions. That's what I'm going to get. I know for a fact that when I get that, that's going to lock it all in for me in terms of the paths, the colors associated. That's what I'm going to get. The Masonic letter G, I'm going to definitely get that. Daniel, Master of Magicians, I probably end up getting all these. The Name of Names, the True and Invisible Rosicrucian Order. And then here we have the Tarot, a key to the wisdom of the ages. This is the Classic Guide by Paul Foster Case, the Tarot, a key to the wisdom of the ages. Now, let's get started. This is the preface to the first edition. This is the first revised edition of Paul Foster Case's classic, The Tarot, a key to the wisdom of the ages. Since its initial publication in 1947 by McCoy Publishing Company, over the years, this book has come to be regarded as the seminal work on the Tarot and on the Tarot's intimate connections with Kabbalah, astrology, alchemy, and the other Hermetic sciences. The only revisions that have been made to the original work are the corrections of misspelled words and obvious errors. That's dope. That way we know we're getting the real. Case first began the study of the Tarot in 1900 at the age of 16. In 1907, so he was 23, he published the attributions of the Tarot keys to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet set forth in this book, which attributions he had arrived at as a result of his personal studies. Real quick, I want to stop. I'm going to try not to have too many interruptions. I want to read straight through. But something I've noticed is that the age of some of these people we regard as like master teachers, they're usually young. I mean, this goes for not just the occult, but also for the mundane and the profane. I think of different activists, they were young. And so if you happen to not be young and you're listening to this, don't feel as though your time has passed, because you can definitely be young in spirit. There's different ways to cultivate a young spirit. For me, I'm 49 years old. So for me, I learned from my children. I just manage, I actively employ the mindset of a child. And what I mean by that is not in any immature way, but I maintain my amazement at everything around me. And that puts me in a childlike mind frame. So let's keep going. Throughout the early part of this century, Case lectured and published works on the Tarot, Kabbalah, astrology, alchemy, masonry, Rosicrucianism, and the effect these sciences had on the founding of the United States of America. His work brought him into contact with such persons as Alice Bailey, very respectable, Michael Whitty, not familiar with him, Claude Bragdon, Judge Troward, and other leading occultists of his era. In 1920, Case published an introduction to the study of Tarot. So by now you figure 20, he's 36. Now out of print, which was the precursor to this book. In 1922, he published the Book of Tokens, a series of 22 inspirationally received meditations on the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. In 1929, he published the first edition of the True and Invisible Rosicrucian Order, which which demonstrated that the original Rosicrucian document could not be accurately interpreted without a thorough understanding of Kabbalah and Tarot, and that the true Rosicrucianism was simply the expression of the tenderness of true Christianity. This might turn some people off. A lot of people are anti-Christianity, and rightfully so to some degree. However, most people who find themselves at odds with Christianity, actually, you're not at odds with Christianity. You are at odds at the person or the societal atmosphere that made you think these stories were literal when they are indeed allegorical. That Christ energy, Christ consciousness, everything that the essence of what that document, the Bible, was meant to relay, it was relayed to you by a pastor or somebody who had no working understanding of astrology. All these things you just listed: astrology, alchemy, occultism, tarot, Kabbalah, had no understanding. So anybody who has any aversion to Christianity, you are not mad at the Bible. You are not exposing that Jesus Christ isn't real. You're actually mad at the person who introduced you to that bullshit. And you're mad that you believed at one time that it was possibly real. Okay. Throughout this period of time and up until his death, Case was busy preparing detailed lessons. Case was busy preparing detailed lesson material on each aspect of the Western mystery training system, which in his published works he was only able to briefly touch upon. In 1939, so you imagine by 1939, he was 16 in 1900, 39, 49, he was 55. In 1939, Case organized the Builders of the Adepts as an order dedicated to the perpetuation of the Western mysteries through the dispensation of these lessons, of these lesson materials in a series of correspondence courses, beginning with simple metaphysics and working up through an in-depth study of the Tarot, the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, Gematria, sound and color, alchemy, and astrology. Finally, in 1947, Case was able to publish the present work, which constituted the summation of over 45 years of study and effort, which represented his magnus opus with respect to the Tarot. Under Case's instruction, artist Jesse Burns Park, born in 1889, transitioned from the flesh in 1964, drew the images of the keys. It is with gratification and great pleasure that the stewards of the order that Case founded announced the publication of this revised edition of his most influential public work. It is our earnest desire that the availability of this book in its present form will inspire its readers to embark upon the journey that leads to the true self residing in the heart of each of us. Readers interested in pursuing further the works of Case and his spiritual successor, Ann Davies, as embodied in the curriculum of the Builders of Adetium, or in obtaining black and white Builders of the Adetium Tarot keys for coloring, write to Builders of the Adetium, 5101-05 North Figueroa Street, Los Angeles, California, 942, www.bota.org, under the shadow of his wings, whose name is Peace, Builders of the Adetium. I'm definitely going to be getting that on myself so I can color in these tarot cards. I know that's going to impact my subconscious mind because of the way that I know how I learn. So, a note to the reader. Builders of the Adetium, BOTA, believe it is very important that each individual interested in personal unfoldment through the use of tarot take the time and make the effort to color his or her own tarot keys. In the words of Paul Foster Case, when you color your own cards, they make on the character of your personality. They are inseparably linked with you. The attention you must give impresses their patterns upon the cells of your brain, builds the details of the designs into your consciousness, and making the tarot a key part of yourself is one of the most practical secrets of all occultism. It is the necessary foundation for all advanced tarot practice. Sets of the uncolored tarot keys and coloring instructions are available from www.bota.org. Builders of the APD. Now I got my orange shirt on. I have my orange highlighter. I'm gonna highlight this Joe, just because I know that this is where I need to be eventually. And by eventually, within the next 90 days, I'll begin coloring my own tarot cards, and of course, I'm going to share it. So, without further ado, let's dive into the good parts. Table of contents. Let me see if I can get this for you a little better. When I need to, I turn it over. I won't be able to read this for myself. Introduction, page 1, the Hebrew Wisdom. Chapter 2, Occult Meaning of Numbers. Chapter 3, Construction of the Tarot, Attribution of the major trumps to the Hebrew alphabet. 4, Key 0, the Fool. 5, Key 1, the Magician. 6, Key 2, the High Priestess. 7, Key 3, the Empress. 8, Key 4, the Emperor. 9, Key 5, the Hierophant. 10, Key 6, the Lovers. 11, Key 7, the Chariot. 12, Key 8, Strength. 13, Key 9, the Hermit. 14, Key 10, the Wheel of Fortune. 15, Key 11, Justice. 16, Key 12, the Hanged Man. 17, Key 13, Death. That ties into unlucky number 13. 18, Key 14, Temperance. 19, Key 15, the Devil, a card I'm looking forward to getting to. 20, Key 16, the Tower. Key 17, the Star. 22, Key 18, the Moon. Chapter 23, Key 19, the Sun. Chapter 24, Key 20, Judgment. 25, Key 21, the World. 26, Methods of Study. 27, Tarot Divination, Resources Index, about the author about Bota. And then we have the illustrations on what page they're on. We're going to get to those as we progress. Let's get it started. Chapter 1, page 1. The Tarot, a key to the wisdom of the ages. Introduction. The Tarot is a pictorial textbook of ageless wisdom. From its pages have been drawn inspiration from some of the most important works on occult science published during the last 75 years. Its influence on the minds of a few enlightened thinkers may be traced throughout the history of the modern revival of interest in esoteric science and philosophy. This revival began in 1854 with the publication of Eliphas Levi's Dogma and Ritual of Transcendental Magic, first of a series of occult writings in which he names the Tarot as his most important source of information. Eliphas Levi's teaching influenced the work of H.P. Blavatsky and Dr. Anna Kingsman. It has been developed and extended in the circles of French occultism, in which Papus, Dr. Gerard and Cossé was for long a leading spirit. Now, Papus is actually the author of, what is that book? Oh, here we go. Papus, who we just mentioned, is the author of the Tarot of the Bohemians, an absolute key to occult science. Papus. And this is a book that, Yes, we're going to read it. I'm not even going to cheat myself. I think that I will be able to lock this information in better by reading these on here live. So I had the book here, which is not why I got it. Somebody who I respect deeply and dearly, John B. Love III, recommended it to me, and he's never let me wrong, so that's why I got it. For English readers, it is interpreted in the books of S.L. McGregor Mathers. I have his book, Kabbalah Denuda. Dr. W. Wynne Westcott, Dr. Arthur Edward Wade. You have one of his books here, and others. The works of New Thought writers, especially the essays of Judge Thomas Troward, echo it again and again. And though Levi himself was a nominal Roman Catholic, his doctrine is utilized by Scottish Rite Masonry in the United States, inasmuch as General Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite repeats verbatim, page after page, from the French occultist Dogma and Ritual. Levi's opinion of the Tarot was very high. He said, as an erudite Kabbalistic book, all combinations of which reveal the harmonies pre-existing between signs, letters, and numbers. The practical value of the Tarot is truly and above all marvelous. A prisoner devoid of books, had he only a tarot of which he knew how to make use, could in a few years acquire a universal science and converse with an unequaled doctrine and inexhaustible eloquence. That's a powerful statement. And that's one of the reasons why I knew I couldn't put off diving into this book anymore, diving into the topic of tarot for my own personal understanding, because to say that, that's a powerful statement. That is a powerful statement. The aim of this analysis is to show you how to use a tarot. A full treatment would require many volumes, but I hope to realize the promise of my title by giving a concise explanation of the general plan of the tarot and a brief outline of its meaning. It should be understood, however, that the student must fill in this outline with the results of his own observation and meditation. That's powerful right there, because we have intellectualism and then we have experience. I'm going to get me a better chair. I see I'm going to be here for a while. A better chair. Something a little more comfortable. And so what I'm going to use as a good analogy for your own observation and meditation. For me, I started off as a book reader, and I reached a point where reading books or intellectualism just wasn't enough. It was like intellectual masturbation. I was going around in circles. And it wasn't until I actually began to pursue my own experience that my consciousness catapulted, and that's how I grew. I would never tell anybody not to read, but you definitely want to have your own observation or understanding and experience, because the whole purpose of this is gnosis. Gnosis translates as knowledge of self. So what you want to do is you want to have your understanding from your view. It was in Philip Cooper's Magician where he said you can make anything work that doesn't make it right. Not wrong, just doesn't make it right. And if you are a serious enough student, at some point you'll realize that it wasn't right, and then you have to unlearn and then relearn. So the best thing to do is to try and learn it the correct way the first time. But if not, have no fear. I've had to unlearn, because this is my journey. I'm going to pursue it. I'm the fool. I'm going to pursue it at my pace and at my leisure and how I so choose to do so. So never underestimate the power of your own observation and, of course, meditation. No one's too busy to meditate. If you are, then you meditate yourself to sleep. What I found was that I have kids young kids, teenagers. So for me, meditation either has to be get up earlier and do it at the start of my day or later in the day. It's always better earlier because later in the day I'm too tired. And what you'll find if you don't actively meditate already, if you set that schedule for yourself and stick to it, you'll find yourself almost addicted to the act of meditation, because I know I did. I would meditate any and everywhere. Okay, let's get back to it. Before entering upon a description of the construction and symbolism of this book of occult science, it may be well to say a word as to its history. In the main, I am in agreement with Arthur Edward Waite, who discusses the various theories as to its origins in his Key to the Tarot, published in London by W.M. Ryder and Sons. Dr. Waite concludes that the Tarot has no exoteric history before the 14th century. Exoteric means outside of the inner circle, or I guess, for lack of a better word, mundane or profane. So essentially, before this time, it was not available to the public. The oldest examples of tarot designs now preserved in European museums were probably made about 1390. According to an occult tradition in which I am inclined to place confidence, the actual date of its invention was about the year 1200 AD. I would disagree. Tarot is an eternal science. It's timeless. But I guess you can say that in our day and age, that's when it kicked off, but I would disagree. The inventors this tradition avers were a group of adepts who met at stated intervals in the city of Fez in Morocco. After the destruction of Alexandria, Fez became the literary and scientific capital of the world. Thither, from all parts of the globe, came wise men of all nations, speaking all tongues. Their conferences were made difficult by differences in language and philosophical terminology. So they hit upon the device of embodying the most important of their doctrines in a book of pictures, whose combination should depend on the occult harmonies of numbers. It always comes down to numbers. Perhaps it was a Chinese adept who suggested the idea. For the Chinese have a proverb, one picture is worth 10,000 words. We know that today as a picture is worth 1,000 words. Who knew that was a Chinese proverb, possibly dating back thousands of years? It makes sense that the Chinese would have that saying because their language, similar to Hebrew, is pictograph. The symbols contain not just a word but a number, and then the pictograph is a symbol which holds another third meaning. These pictures express ideas instead of words, so that Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans, although they speak more than 7 different languages, communicate easily with one another, if only they can read and write. As a skeleton for their invention, the wise men chose the relatively simple system of numbers and letters afforded by Kabbalah, or secret wisdom of Israel. This esoteric doctrine, apparently Jewish, was really a development of ideas fundamentally identical with the wisdom taught in the secret schools of China, Tibet, and India. Some account of it, therefore, must precede our study of the Tarot itself. The master key to the Hebrew wisdom is the name translated Lord in the authorized version of the Bible, and Jehovah in the revised editions. It is not really a name at all, but rather a verbal, numerical, and geometrical formula. This is something that I've encountered over and over, especially in Ophir's book, where he says that the name of God in the Bible is not a name, it is a formula. I'm pretty sure he's going to get into the Yod Hey Vav Hey. Let's continue. I want to read that last sentence again. The master key to the Hebrew wisdom is the name translated Lord in the authorized version of the Bible and Jehovah in the revised versions. It is not really a name at all, but rather a verbal, numerical, and geometrical formula. In Roman letters corresponding to Hebrew, it is spelled IHVH. This is a noun form derived from a Hebrew verb meaning to be. Correctly translated, it means that which was, that which is, that which shall be. That, not he. Thus, it is a perfect verbal symbol for the one reality. For that something which has always subsisted behind all forms in the eternity of the past. For that something, and we got this, the something, the S is capitalized. For that something which really is behind all the appearances and misunderstandings of the present. For that something which will be the foundation for all the changing forms of life expression in the eternity to come. I think that applies. He wrote this book almost 100 years ago, but it applies in our time too. Most people, for the extent of wokeness that they proclaim to have, they actually have a very Christian mindset. And so God is a he, man is the head of the household, and they don't realize that what we portray down here in the physical is a mirror of the spiritual. So masculine per se doesn't have to have a penis. Feminine per se doesn't have to have a vagina. And then when you think just in terms of that polarity of sex, penis, vagina, male, female, you have to realize that gender does not encompass sex. And so personally, I don't want to digress too far, but personally I believe that what we see today in terms of gender fluidity is an attempt to correct, shift us off course, because we have more than just two polarities. Just like there's more than two pillars on the tree of life, we actually have a neutral, equalizing force, and that is expressed in terms of androgyny. So I could be wrong. Please don't get mad or report me for what I'm saying, but I think that what's going on today, although it might not be coming from a pure place, it definitely was initiated in the spirit, because the spirit is above, matter is below, and everything that we know of rolls downhill. That includes snowballs and shit. Alright, enough of me ranting right now. Never has ageless wisdom attempted to define this one reality. Its inner nature defies analysis, cannot be put within the limits of any formal statement, because the one reality is infinite. Yet in every age the report of the wise has been that in the one something inheres the power to know. We say therefore that IHVH is a verbal symbol for the conscious energy that brings all things and creatures into existence. Now I wrote a note to myself, I'm going to read it. The geometry of the tree of life is the Masonic G. Well, which you can Google that to come to understanding. But for me, it hit me in layers, because this journey that we're undertaking, like the hero's journey, is going to be cyclical. Not so much cyclical, but it's going to be spiral. So you'll find yourself coming back to things you thought you already knew. I wouldn't even say thought. You'll find yourself coming back to things that you know, but you'll have a deeper layer of understanding to add to it. So that the G is geometry. What impressed that upon me is just that the deeper you contemplate and meditate on certain aspects, especially Kabbalah, you will come across geometrical patterns, or just the numbers. Like you said, it comes down to numbers. Let's continue. The Kabbalah classifies all possible operations of this one energy into 4 planes or worlds. Each plane or world is represented by a letter of IHVH as follows. The archetypal world. This, I should have an ink pen here. I'll use this. The archetypal world. This is the world of pure ideas. archetypal plane are the root notions inherent in the innermost nature of the universal conscious energy. Let me read that again because I stumbled myself trying to contemplate and read at the same time. The archetypal world. This is the world of pure ideas. Ideas are formless, akin to true thought. In the archetypal plane are the root notions inherent in the innermost nature of the universal conscious energy. From these ideas are derived all actual forms of manifestation. For example, the pure idea of a chair is the idea of sitting, and that idea, as in all others, is embodied of volition, the will to sit. This will to sit is the same single root notion behind all possible chair forms that ever have been, are now, or shall be. Thus, the archetypal world is seen to be the plane of will ideas. To its ageless wisdom assigns the element of fire, fire synonymous with light, representing universal, also fire, light, representing the universal radiant energy. In IHVH, this word and this element are represented by the letter I, or Yod. Now think about it. Just a few minutes ago, I said, give me a moment, I'm going to get a more comfortable chair. What's the difference? A chair is a chair. Well, a chair actually it represents a dual concept. So the first is the idea of sitting, which is what I did initially. I just sat and started getting down. But then it was the will to sit. And so for me, the will to sit extended even further because I wanted to sit comfortably for the next 2-3 hours. Let's move on to the next world, the creative world. So the first world is the archetypal world, which is absolute. And the next world, the creative world, is Bria, the creative world. Here, the ideas of the archetypal world are specialized as particular patterns. Sitting becomes the mental pattern for some special kind of chair. So I went from, just right here where we're sitting, I went from the archetypal world, which was the idea of sitting and the will to sit, and then I came to here, the world, the creative world. Here, the ideas of the archetypal world are specialized as particular patterns. Sitting becomes the mental pattern for some special kind of chair. The cosmic energy acting on this plane contains the patterns of all chairs that have been made or thought of in the past, of all existing in the present, but not those as yet, because it hasn't gained form yet. So the creative world, when you're in the act of creating, so I'm sure as we read along, we'll see me going through these four stages of chairdom, of the act of sitting. So, with all other patterns of particular forms, to this world, ageless wisdom assigns the element of water, symbolizing the fluid plasticity of the cosmic mind stuff. The creative world is the creative world is represented in IHVH by the first letter H, which is hey, yo, hey, ball, hey. The formative world. Here, the archetypal ideas specialized in creative patterns are brought forth into actual expression. It is the plane of processes. Now, we went through, let me back up, we went through absolute, Bria, the formative world, we would find ourselves in Yetzirah. Here, the archetypal ideas specialized in creative patterns are brought forth into actual expression. It is the plane of processes, the world of forces behind the veil of physical things. The formative world is that which is now explored by physicists and chemists. I want to highlight something I just read. It is the plane of processes. That's what I want you. See, this is what I'm not comfortable with. I usually read with a book in my lap. archetypal ideas, force, and we're transitioning to form and then eventually function. It is the world of vibratory activities and also the astral plane of occultism. Here take place the various kinds of action whereby the cosmic energy actualizes its patterns. Ageless wisdom assigns to this world the element of air, representing the life energy which wise men everywhere have associated with breath, ruach. The formative world is represented by V, Vav, and IHVH. The material world. This is the plane of actual forms which affect our physical senses. Here the process of bringing down the ideas of sitting through an operation based on the pattern of a particular chair is finally completed as the chair itself. This plane corresponds to the element of earth, representing the solidity and tangibility of physical objects. It corresponds to the second H in IHVH. Now what you have to understand is the material world corresponds to Malkuth. We term it is termed earth, but it's not just our physical planet, it's all materiality. Everything on this physical plane falls under the element of earth. And the best way to understand this or to work with this would be through the Kabbalion and the law of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. In every one of the four worlds, the Kabbalah conceives the operation of 10 aspects of the universal conscious energy. That's because each world there's a tree in and of itself. Just like in each Sephirah, there is an entire tree, but each world has its own tree. This idea that all possible aspects of the one reality may be reduced to a tenfold classification is found in every version of the ageless wisdom. Thence arises the esoteric teaching concerning the meaning of numbers. This is a subject almost limitless in its ramifications, but what is needed for it to roll steady will be found in the next chapter. Your numbers is always found in numbers. That's what I found. And not just in, if you go to use your gematria calculator, you spew out a bunch of numbers and meaning. I'm not just counting or knocking gematria calculators because I've used them. I went through that phase myself. The only thing I did was I restricted my research to knowledge itself. So I kind of stayed away from celebrities and things of that nature and anything that didn't apply to me or my immediate life. So of course I did gematria on myself. I did the gematria on my children, things like that. It was all personal. Johnny Depp in no way impacts me outside of having done some super cool movies. Only way I would do the gematria on Johnny Depp is if I dreamed about it or something like that. Gotta find that and sit back up. Alright, so Chapter 2, Occult Meaning of Numbers. In this chapter, we shall consider the occult significance of the numbers from 0 to 10, with particular reference to the esoteric meaning of the so-called Arabic numerals. As a matter of fact, these numerals were invented by Hindu priests, from whom they were borrowed and slightly altered by the Arab mathematicians who introduced them to Europe. The key to the meaning of the numerals is the diagram which appears as the frontispiece of this book. So real soon we're going to get to it, which is this right here. This is the frontispiece. You'll notice the interlocking circles, 2, 3, 5 interlocking circles. There's an oblong circle, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 triangles, and as well as rectangle. So we'll get to it when it calls for it, because that's important to understand this book. I was blown away. Readers of these pages who are familiar with occult symbolism will perceive that the basis of the construction of this diagram is the 6-pointed star, known as the Shield of David, and the Star of the Macrocosm, and also the Merkaba. 6-point star is also the Merkaba. You can also find the 6-pointed star in the Masonic symbol of the square and compass. Let's divert for a second. Because Ophir spoke on this. Okay, Ophir in his book about magic, he pointed out the square and compass, and he drew a line across the compasses and across the square, which gave you a rough or rudimentary Star of David. And then from there he went on to point out how you can get each of the elements, the 4 elements from the Masonic square and compass. So for those who are thinking it's all evil or whatever, it's just science, man. Freemasonry is just a repository of ancient information, and it's kept there and stored, and it's built up in the astral. So no matter what happens on the physical plane, the next being is to evolve. They'll be able to tap in and work with the same tools and instruments for consciousness. That's it, that's all. Now what you do with a tool is entirely different, because we know that a hammer is the screwdriver, but if you work hard enough, I'm pretty sure you can use a hammer to pull a screw out, or even to put a screw in. So that's just what I came up with. Where are we? Okay. Years ago, one of the Theosophical masters declared that the system of 6 circles tangent to a central 7th is a key to the construction of the cosmos. At that time, the master's meaning was not grasped by the student to whom the statement was made. I hope the inclusion of this diagram in the front of the book may stimulate some of my readers to further research. Want of space forbids my developing the various details. I shall therefore content myself by saying that this one diagram is a key to the geometrical construction of the Great Pyramid. Now remember, I wrote myself a note that the G in Masonry is for geometry. Geometry is essentially God, or that underlying concept or deity behind all. I'm not talking about the God that you may worship in the church or anywhere, but the all, for lack of a better word. Let's read that last line again. I shall therefore content myself by saying that this one diagram is a key to the geometrical construction of the Great Pyramid, to a very close approximation to the squaring of the circle, which is Masonic, to the true meaning of the apron worn by Freemasons, to the correct construction of the Kabbalistic diagram known as the Tree of Life, which has been called a key to all things, and to the proportions of the mysterious vault in which the body of the founder of the Rosicrucian order is said to have been discovered. These are but a small selection of the mysteries to which this one diagram affords a clue. I shall confine myself to its numerical significance. In Arabic notation, all numbers are represented by 10 symbols, beginning with 0 and ending with 9. They are thus derived from the diagram. Now, for me, my teachings go back to C. Freeman L, 0 to 9. Some simple keys you can construct just by going from 0 to 9. And I am going to need a pen because I'm going to trace out these diagrams as he reads them out. Okay, so I'm going to read, and then I'm going to trace out a diagram as he traces out just the 10, 0 through 9 in this diagram right here. Hopefully you can see it well. Let me get a little more light. That should do it. We're already at an hour, and I plan to be way deeper into this book after an hour, so maybe there will be a part 2. Maybe there will be, because what you're actually witnessing is my process. It's kind of slow, but that's the only way I can get the best. That's the only way I can get the best out of what I'm studying is to kind of go over it and re-go over it, and then my mind might wander. I might drift off a little bit, and that's part of my process, and I'm gonna share that process with you. Okay, so we are at 0. An ellipse representing the cosmic egg. That brings to mind that black dot, the Bindusi, cosmic egg. Whence come all things. 0 is a symbol of the absence of quality, quantity, or mass. Thus, it denotes absolute freedom from every limitation whatsoever. Ooh, I don't know why I didn't highlight that before. I'm going to do so now, which is, all right. 0 is a symbol of the absence of quality, quantity, or mass. Thus, it denotes absolute freedom from every limitation whatsoever. So you would think that the absence of quality, quantity, or mass, you would think that's nothing. But actually what that represents is potential. 0 represents the potential for everything in creation. It is a sign of the infinite and eternal conscious energy. It is no thing, though manifested in everything. It is that which was, is, and shall be forever. But it is nothing we can name. Boundless, infinitely potential, living life. It is the rootless root of all things, of all activities, of all modes of consciousness. And you know what came to mind just now was the story, the Hindu story. I believe it was Varuna and Rama. Oh, I wish I could recall this correctly. But they came upon that endless beam of light, and then one said he was going to go to the top, and he was going to, they were both going to find the beginning or the end, and neither one could. And so one of them lied and said, well, hey, I found it. And that was that. We're going to end this. Because the search could actually go on forever. And that describes this no thing, 0, this root of all things, of all activities, of all modes of consciousness. So let's get back to it. In it are included all imaginable and unimaginable possibilities, but it transcends all of them. The Kabbalists call it A, no thing, B, the boundless, C, limitless light. Pure conscious energy above and beyond thought. To us it is super consciousness. The descending arc of the ellipse on the reader's left represents involution. The descending arc on the ellipse represents on the left. The descending arc on the left, that's involution. The winding up process whereby limitless light manifests itself in name and form. At B, the lowest point of involution is reached in the mineral kingdom. From B back to A, on the right side of the ellipse, ascending arc represents evolution. So we're talking about the fool. Oh, wow. So now I see why the fool is represented by 0. Here's involution, and then here's evolution, the hero's journey. Even though we calculate the hero's journey being clockwise, which would be evolution, then involution. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. From B back to A, here's B at the base. Back to A. On the right side of the ellipse, ascending arc represents evolution. Now I want to drop something real quick that the C3 and L dropped, and it was high science, believe it or not. Evolution represents love. Devolution represents loved. And evolve is the same as evolution, so it's just love. But you look at the first 4 words: evolution, devolution, it's love or loved. Okay, so from B back to A, on the right side of the ellipse, the ascending arc represents evolution, the unwinding process. From B to F is the arc of evolution in the inorganic world. From H to F, okay, let's go back. From B to F is the arc of evolution in the inorganic. So from B to F, that small arc, see, here's the circle, here's the circumference, which represents this dynamic action. So from B to F is the arc of evolution in the inorganic world. Inorganic would have to be like rocks, like you said, minerals. From F to H is the arc of organic development up through plants and animals. So remember the 4 kingdoms, we just did the 4 worlds. We have the 4 kingdoms, which is mineral, vegetable, animal, human. So we're walking up through those now. So here he says that from F to H, so again we're on this initial arc, but the overreaching arc is the cosmic egg. So from B to F we have inorganic, but from F to H we have from F to H is the organic, the arc of the organic up through plants to animals. H to D is the arc of organic development from the lowest animal to the highest type of human consciousness at point D. So from H to D, what he said was this is the highest arc from the lowest animal to the highest type of human consciousness at point D. So in a way, he's just showing the evolutionary process that none of us on the surface can see, which is each of those 4 worlds are striving up to the next. And when you reach the level of human, what the humans reach towards for their evolution of consciousness would be the absolute principle, the God realm. And then what you also have to realize is that people always say, well, how come monkeys haven't evolved yet? Because your consciousness determines your form and your shape. So as you gain consciousness, you adapt a different body, for lack of a better word. You adapt a different body to reflect that level of consciousness. And so it says, okay, so they ordered a dog. Only a few human beings have reached this point. And the point he's speaking of is D, because D is very close to A on the cosmic egg scale, right? Remember, this is involution, this is evolution. So D, and then here in D, we see the triangle, downward facing triangle, and then we see the upward facing triangle, which is most likely why this side is involution, and this side is evolution, upwards and downwards. Alright, let's get it. The arc from D to A is that of conscious expression beyond human levels, which would be the world of absolute and Kabbalah. The evolution of conscious oneness with the divine. Thus, the 2 sides of the ellipse suggest the esoteric, the inner, shared only by our view, doctrine of involution or descent, and a corresponding evolution or ascent. The ascending arc corresponds to the occult doctrine. First the stone, then the plant, then the animal, then the man, and last the God, which is what I was just describing. That was the process I was just describing in terms of each plane striving towards the next. Now, Kabbalah only has 4 worlds, so once you reach the plane of man, what do you strive for? Godhood. God. 1. Oh, I'm not done yet. Let me put it back up. Let's put it back up. We're not done with the diagram yet, B. So now we're at the number 1. I have to pause, will give me some grace. Okay. 1. In the diagram, the number 1 is the vertical line from A to B. Let me get my pen. So from A to B, we see 1. Already I see the number 4. Bow, bow, bow. And the number 7. 8, of course, and we'll get to it. I won't get too far ahead. Connecting the extreme height with the extreme depth, or it could be represented as Malkuth to Kether, the middle pillar, the pillar of equilibrium. Beginning, initiative, originality, unity, singleness, isolation, and the like. In the Kabbalah, it is called the admirable or wonderful intelligence, the supreme crown, to show that 1, which is Kether, represents the determining, ruling directive in all volitional aspect of consciousness. This primary mode of consciousness is concealed behind all veils of name and form. It is the consciousness of the true self, or I am. Onlooker, seeking creation through countless eyes, manifesting itself through innumerable personalities. Ageless wisdom teaches that all things are manifestations or projections in time and space of the powers of I am. In short, the I am, or number 1, is the essence, substance, energy, and consciousness expressed in all forms. Everything in the universe is self-expression of the I am. This is the first principle, the primary existence, the first mover. In and through human personality, it manifests as the waking self-consciousness. So something I came to the realization of in terms of Kabbalah is the importance of the middle pillar in humanity, because that's the direct path to oneness, and it applies directly to our consciousness. However, those different sephiroth exist on the pillar because we walk our way up in that lightning strike. We zigzag our way up. If you're that kind of raw, you just go straight up the pillar and everything is absorbed as you go. 2. On the diagram, this number begins at C, follows the upper circle through D to the center diagram, thence through the lower circle E, and is completed by the horizontal line from E to F. The meanings the number includes. So let's just get it started. Let's trace it out. So it begins at C, follows through to D, and then to the E, and then to F. So here's 2. Bow, bow. So 2 is like a Z, Zeta. 2 represents, now 2 on the Kabbalistic tree of life would be Hokmah, duplication, because once Kether emerged from the triple stages of darkness, from Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof, once Kether, the first emanation, came duplication, reflection, receptivity, dependence, alternation, antagonism, and the like. Kabbalists call it wisdom, the reflection and the perfect self-consciousness of the I am. Wisdom is the mirror wherein I am sees itself. The number 2 is also named illuminating intelligence. It is that which illuminates the personal mind. It is the aspect of universal consciousness which manifests through human personality as grasp of the inner principles of the nature of the one conscious energy. In Hebrew occultism, 2 is also the particular number of the life force of all creation. And to me, that makes ultimate sense, because without the number 2, nothing else would exist. You have the singularity, then we have duality. And from duality, it's like looking at a mirror facing a mirror, and you will see infinite mirrors. So from the number 2, we get duplication, reflection, receptivity, and the like. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but there is no zero. Well, I'm gonna say there is no zero. What I'm saying is the Fool card represented by 0, but it is the first card, so it corresponds to number 1. And then the Empress card, number 2, corresponds to Hokma. Oh, that's what I wanted to show real quick. While I have these books out here, Robert Wayne's Kabbalistic Tarot. He has an awesome image in the front of his book, which is the Tree of Life, showing the Tarot correspondences. So here's the Fool. The next would be the Fool, then the Magician, then the Empress. I don't know why I wanted to show that, but it popped in my head, figured out what. So now we're at the number 3. The upper half of this figure is the same as the upper half of 2. From C to D, bow to bow. From C to D to the center of the diagram, which is there, and follows the lower circle F and B around E. So here to here. From C to D to the center of the diagram, from here to here. Okay, bow. See how I would get 3 like that, thus. So it is from C to D. Its lower half begins here or here and follows the lower circle through F and B. So there's it. There. So there to there. Yeah. 3 would be Bina. Among the meanings of 3 are multiplication, development, growth. Growth and development. My GDs out there. Unfoldment, therefore expression. 3 signifies the actual outworking of the principles reflected from 1 by 2. In Kabbalah, 3 is understanding, looking forward into the field of manifestation, in contrast to wisdom, 2, which looks back to the self-knowledge of the I Am, 1. So 3 is more than just a reflective quality, it's a culmination. Hence 3 is the concrete application of abstract wisdom. Hence 3 is called sanctifying intelligence, to convey the idea that through growth or expression comes the perfected manifestation of the potencies latent in the limitless light, Ein Soul of Earth. On the form side, perfect realization, sanctification, requires perfected organism in consciousness. It is perfected faculty and function. Faculty being the faculties of your mind, function being the output of correct thinking. 4. This figure starts with the vertical line figure 1, A to B, from there to there, adds 2 other lines, A to G, and then G to H. We had traced it out before, which is there, there, then there. A to B, A to G, G to H. Reminds me of algebra. But remember, we're talking geometry, and God can be found in geometry. You see these right angles and perpendiculars. Thus drawn, 4 shows in its upper portion a triangle, which you can see here. What would that be, an equilateral triangle? Symbol of the number 3, and in its lower portions a T-square, or tau, a geometrical symbol of 4 itself. Triangle and T-square are among the most important instruments of the draftsman, which would be a masturbation. They have occult reference to the esoteric side of geometry. They suggest planning, surveying, topography, and the like. From these considerations are derived the following meanings of 4: order, measurement, classification, recording, tabulation, and so on. Because of these meanings, Kabbalists make 4 the number of memory. So 4 would be chesed. And I would say that to be a chesed, number 4 of memory, is to remember from whence you came. Because the life powers perfect memory of its own potencies and of the needs of even the least of its centers of expression cannot be supposed to fail. The idea of beneficence, good giving, is assigned to the number 4. This beneficence is not wasteful prodigality. All the gifts of the life power are measured out. Every center of expression receives exactly what is coming to it, always. Therefore, the number 4 is called the measuring intelligence. And the Masonic Lodge that would correspond to running the master, or even Christ energy. I won't keep making Masonic references. That would be the Christ energy, measuring intelligence. 5. On the diagram, the first line of this figure is the horizontal C to D. So C to D for number 5. Bow, bow. The second vertical is C to I. Bow, bow. C to I. Third includes 5/6 of the lower circle from I to F. So it's bow to bow, and here to there, then 5/6 of that circle to F, and then B to E. So we go here, there, and there. Certainly said it in that manner because it's an indication of 5/6. Something to contemplate. Meditation, because 5 is the middle number between 1 beginning and 9 completion. Adaptation means agency, activity, process, and the like. 5 is the dynamic law preceding the abstract order 4. 5 would be Geburah on a tree of life. To primitive minds, let me read that again. Meditation, because 5 is the middle number between 1 beginning and 9 completion. Adaptation, so 5 would be a balancing. The scales would have to be balanced by 5, in my opinion. To primitive minds, the working of law seems to be the operation of many forces, mostly hostile to man. See, that makes sense because Geborah, number 5, is Mars, and we think of that Geboric discipline or lessons, Mars being what everybody assumes to be the planet of war and aggression, right? So to primitive minds, the working of law seems to be the operation of many forces, mostly hostile to man. Hence 5 is the number of versatility, not hostility, versatility. And one of its names in Kabbalah is fear. That might be what it means in the Bible when it says the fear of God is the beginning of understanding. I believe. Ignorant persons endeavor to propitiate. Ignorant persons endeavor to propitiate the power they fear. Their sacrifices are the beginning of religious ritual. Hence, 5 is the number of religion. That brings to mind Islam, because Allah is spelled with 5 letters and represents arm, leg, arm, head. So I always equate the number 5 with man aspiring to godhood. Well, I don't think I'm too far wrong. A better, though incomplete knowledge of the law sees it as relentless, harsh, mechanical expression of mathematical principles. And I think that's why Mars gets a bad rap, because it is a mechanical expression of mathematics. The numbers, that's in the saying that the numbers don't lie. Math is not concerned. Math is like F your feelings. You know, we're going to add this up and see what it comes up to. So, that was a good point. What was that? Okay. This is the interpretation. Let me start. A better, though incomplete knowledge of law sees it as a relentless, harsh, mechanical expression of mathematical principles, taking no account of human needs and aspirations. This is the interpretation of the materialist, who sees the law as a mighty power. The police forces fall under Geborah as well. So that might be why the law gets out of control, because taking no account of human needs and aspirations. This is the interpretation of the materialist, one who's firmly rooted in the material realm, who sees the law as a mighty power. Hebrew sages take account of this also and say that 5 is the number of strength and severity, as well as fear. Finally, to seers and sages, law appears as the manifestation of perfect justice, whereby man, whose numeral symbol is also 5. See, I always associated 5 with man. I don't remember how I got onto that path, but that's just where I keep it. May so adapt natural conditions that he may realize progressive liberation from every kind of bondage. So that correlates and corresponds to my understanding of 5, man aspiring to godhood. So I'll read that again. Finally, to seers and sages, law, well, see, Firinell said law means wall. And walls are usually north. I mean, they 4 corners, but beyond the wall is usually darkness. That's symbolized in mythologies and stories. Finally, to seers and sages, law appears as the manifestation of perfect justice, whereby man, whose numeral symbol is also 5, may so adapt natural conditions that he may realize progressive liberation from every kind of bondage. 5 then is the number of versatility because it shows the changing aspects of the one law, inspiring fear in the ignorant, perceived by the materialist as relentless strict, and understood by the wise as an undeviating justice. That describes the times that we're living in. And he wrote this book almost 100 years ago, which is why man seems so conflicted on this material plane. Read it again. 5 then is the number of versatility, not hostility, versatility, because it shows the changing aspects of the one law. Laws change consistently down here on the material plane. Abortion's legal, abortion's illegal. A black man can't learn to read, a black man can't learn to read. It just goes on and on. Weed is illegal, now it is legal, but not on the federal level, only on the state level. So there you have it. Inspiring fear in the ignorant, which is the masses of mankind, perceived by the materialists as relentless strict, you can apply that to the police, and understood by the wise as undeviating justice, because it is what it is. And if you're wise enough to see it, then you can act accordingly. This one law is the root of all operations of the life power, and is therefore called radical intelligence. The root consciousness expressed in human personality is this one law of mediation or adaptation. Man can change conditions. This is the secret of his power to realize freedom. You can change your condition. You usually change your condition by an act of meditation and vibration, which is by an act of mental thought processes. You can tie it into the law of correspondence in the volume, or the law of vibration. The higher your vibration, the higher your thought processes and the higher your conditions. You can go through any of the Kabbalion, not any, but the majority, rhythm, polarity, they all apply here. So number 6. On the diagram, this is a continuous line from D to A down through the ellipse on the involution curve, because 6, always remember, 6 means sex. That was the Greek, I believe. The Greek word 6 was sex. And so sex for me represents like reincarnation or incarnation. So the number 6 is from D to A, and then down through the ellipse on the involution curve to B, then around the lower circle E, symmetry. Oh, so let me see. So 6. Its symmetry suggests the philosophical conception of beauty. Oh, that makes sense, because 6 is also Tifereth. Tifereth on the Kabbalah tree of life is known as beauty. And I think the beauty of this, most people, when you think of 6, sex, reincarnation, incarnation, the average person would say either they didn't ask to be here or their body is a prison. But this is a beautiful thing. This incarnation, this ability to interact on a dense level and then aspire and rise to a higher level is a beautiful thing. And so that makes the ultimate sense to me. So yeah, the number 6, just now that helped me out tremendously to know that the number 6 corresponds perfectly to beauty, and the beauty is that you're here right now experiencing, and if you're listening to this, you are not only experiencing, but you desire to evolve to a higher state of consciousness. And that's the ish. That's the ish. That's where it's at. Is to evolve to a higher state of consciousness. And that's the beauty of it all. That's why we came here to put in this work. Okay. Let me read that first part again. On the diagram, this is a continuous line from D to A and down through the ellipse on the involution curve to B, then around the lower circle to E. So B. Oh, it says, so you actually go from D to A, then you go around, and it terminates at E. That's your 6, my bad. And it terminates at E. Okay. Its symmetry suggests the philosophical conception of beauty. This is the direct outcome of ideas expressed by the preceding numerals. A free life power, 0. Knowing itself perfectly, 1. Grasping all possibilities of what it is in itself, 2. Understanding just how these possibilities may be worked out into expression, 3. I'm going to back it up. And at each number, I'm going to state the sephira or the emanation. So a free life power, 0. We're going to place 0, not in the terms of the Fool card. We're going to place 0 at Ein Sof knowing itself perfectly, 1. Kether. Grasping all possibilities of what it is in itself, 2. Hokmah. Understanding just how these possibilities may be worked out into expression, 3. Bina. Never forgetting itself for any detail of the perfect order of its self-manifestation, 4. Chesed. And developing that order through the agency of a perfectly just law or method, 5. Geburah. Must inevitably be working towards a perfectly symmetrical balance and therefore beautiful result. This is implicit in the following meaning of 6. Balance, equilibration, symmetry, beauty, harmony of opposites, reciprocity, complementary activities, polarity, love. It is named intelligence of meaning, intelligence of mediating influence, or intelligence of the separated emanations. Because 6 on the tree of life is critical. So I'm going to get me a little sticky, icky. So I'm going to make sure that I come back to that. Since I'm in keeping with my Spadistana today, I got the orange shirt on, and I'm using the orange highlighter. I'm going to use this to continually identify sections on my reread. Okay, 7. On the diagram, this is composed of 2 lines. The first horizontal line from C to D, the second diagonal line from D to E. So we see simply the 7. On the diagram, this is composed of 2 lines. The first horizontal from C to D, the second diagonal from D to E. To exhaust the meanings of 7 would take as many pages as an encyclopedia. It is the great biblical number. Many books in both the Old and New Testaments began writing on a plan of 7s, 7 chapters, 7 subdivisions, and so on. On this point, see the literary introductions in Moulton's Modern Reader's Bible. The more important occult meanings of 7 are rest, which is God did rest on the seventh day. Safety, security, victory. To the ancients, 7 represented temporal cessation, not final perfection, as some have thought. In Hebrew, the word 7 and that for oath are closely related, since the security and safety of a sworn compact were represented in Hebrew thought by 7. 7 after Tiferet would be Netzach of the planet Venus. I'll never associate the number 7 or Venus with pacts, a sworn pact. So I'm going to have to look into that personally for myself. And I'll leave myself a note to look further into that. And see, this is also why eventually, and I'm going to share it with everybody, I'm going to begin learning Hebrew, because I reached a point where I denied it stubbornly, and I know now that I have to at least have a rudimentary and working understanding, if only to understand the meaning of words. But I'm sure with my mentality, I'll learn to read it at the very least. Okay, so to the ancients, 7 represented temporary cessation, arrest, not final perfection, as some have thought. In Hebrew, the word 7, I'm going to highlight this for myself. In Hebrew, the word 7 and that for oath are closely related, since the security and safety of a sworn compact were represented in Hebrew thought by 7. This number stands for the logical consequence of the ideas symbolized by the numbers preceding it in this series. Perfect life power, working in the way outlined in the explanation of 6, cannot be supposed to fail. Omnipotence must ultimately, no matter what present appearances may be, arrive at a triumphantly successful conclusion to all its undertakings. The great work is as yet unfinished. The cosmic experiment has not come to completion, but when we consider the nature of the source of that experiment, the nature of the worker in that work, reason assures us that it must succeed down to the minutest detail. The aspect of consciousness to which 7 corresponds is called the occult or hidden intelligence. So 7 is actually the number of the occult. Because occult merely means hidden, and it's usually hidden in plain sight. 8 on the diagram. 8 on the diagram. This is a figure composed of the upper and lower circles within the ellipse. In writing it, we begin at A, describing a descending S. So bow, bow, bow. To B. So from A, form an S to B. So it's actually going from involution to evolution, then evolution to evolution, which is why the Aurora Borealis and the infinity symbol for A was like thus, the form figure suggests vibration by the shape of the lines, and alternation by the 2 kinds of motion used in describing it. It is also the only figure, except 0, which may be written over and over again without lifting pen from paper. 8 would be hard. Hard is the Sephirah of the magician. And also suggests the number 8 is endless repeating cycle. Thus, in mathematics, the figure 8, written horizontally, is the sign of infinity. Among its occult meanings are rhythm, alternate cycles of involution and evolution, vibration, flux, and reflux, and the like, which makes sense because the path of the magician or the occultist is going to be a spiral, and that spiral can be represented by the number 8, involution to evolution to de-evolution to involution to evolution, so on and so forth. So I can see that. I can definitely see that. Let's read it again. Rhythm. Okay. Among its occult meanings are rhythm, alternate cycles of involution, evolution, vibration, flux and reflux, and the like. It represents also the fact that opposite forms of expression, that is, all pairs of opposites, are effects of a single cause. See on this point Isaiah 45 verses 5 to 7. Let me go grab my Bible. Literally have 3 or 4 Bibles. So I went for the purpose of this, grab this big old sucker right here. You know what I'm saying? So he said to look at Isaiah 45 verses 5 to 7. And I like this Bible because it's a pictorial Bible. I like the images it's based on. It don't have no secrets in it. You can buy it online. Let's see. We're looking for Isaiah 45. Isaiah 45. Isaiah 45 verses 5 through 7. I am, remember we talked about that when we talked about the number 1 encompassing the I am principle. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God besides me. I girded thee, though thou hast not known me, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west, that there is none besides me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So all that is encompassed in the number 7. That's kind of mind-blowing right there. And that's actually one of my favorite scriptures. I was surprised I didn't recall it as soon as I saw it. Everything stems from a single cause, which is the I am. The number 8 is, did I say 7? No, that's number 8. It all stems from the number 8. Everything stems from a single cause, the number 8, which is symbolized by this S shape from A to C, round, back up. The number 8 is the digit value of the name IHVH, Jehovah, 888. 888 is the numeration of the name Jesus in Greek, and 8 is not only the dominical number or number of the Lord in Christian numeral symbolism, but it's also the particular number of the god called Thoth by the Egyptians. Wow. Nebo of Assyrians, Hermes by Greeks, and Mercury by Romans. One day I'm going to share the maddening channels that I got from Thoth. But it wasn't Thoth as the Egyptian deity of writing and wisdom and magic. It was more so Thoth as a correspondence to Hermes the trickster. One day I'm going to do it. It was so maddening that, I'll be honest, made me question my sanity at one point. But I did come up with the only way I could think of to relay it, a book that I already have the title to, the Book of Calamitous Reasoning. Thus Thus, 8 is preeminently the number of magic and of hermetic science. Its Hebrew name is splendor, and the aspect of consciousness to which it corresponds is called perfect intelligence. The Hebrew adjective translated perfect is shlm. A noun spelled with the same letters means peace, security, health, wealth, satisfaction, and thus refers to the perfect realization of the success represented by the number 7. Yeah, the first thing I saw with shlm was shalom, which means peace. So we're actually dealing with the number 8, we're dealing with hard, set for hard on the tree of life. 9. On the diagram, it begins at D. 9 begins at D, follows the upper circle down to the center of the diagram, continues back to D, and then along the line of the ellipse on the right side of the diagram to E. So it begins here, makes a complete circle, and then comes down here to E. As last of the numeral symbols, 9 represents the following ideas: completion, attainment, fulfillment, the goal of endeavor, the end of a cycle of activity. Yet, because 8 indicates rhythm, the volume, as part of the creative process of completion, As last of the numeral symbols, 9 represents the following ideas: completion, attainment, fulfillment, the goal of endeavor, the end of a cycle of activity. Yet, because 8 indicates rhythm as part of the creative process, completion is not absolute succession. So just because 7 is said to represent completion, the number 8 exists to remind you that you're not done. You got more work to do. The endless spiral. The end of one cycle is the beginning of another. This fact is the basis of all practical occultism. Nobody ever comes to the end of his tether. Nobody ever reaches a point where nothing more remains to be hoped, where nothing remains to be accomplished. Every end is the seed of a fresh beginning. In Kabbalah, therefore, 9 is called basis or foundation. We're talking about Yesod. Yesod is the foundation. Yesod represents the regenerative principle of man. Archangel Gabriel, water, the West, and corresponds. Every end is the seed of a fresh beginning. In Kabbalah, therefore, 9 is called basis or foundation. It corresponds to the mode of consciousness named pure or clear intelligence. Because the completion of any process is the pure, clear, unadulterated expression of the intention or idea which initiated the process. 10 combines the ellipse of superconsciousness, 0, with the vertical line of self-consciousness, 1. It is the number of perfection and dominion. Read from right to left, from units to tens, as all composite figures should be read symbolically from right to left, from units to tens. It suggests the outpouring of the limitless life power through the initiative, speculation, and concentration of the I am. We're talking about Malkuth, so that actually makes perfect sense in terms of it being the number. And think about it, everybody thinks that this world is so horrible, but it's represented by the number 10. What do we call a woman that's fine? She's a dime. She's a perfect 10. Kabbalah is called the number 10, the kingdom. The mode of consciousness assigned to it is the resplendent intelligence, brilliant, glowing, full of life and power. In one esoteric text, this mode of intelligence is said to have its seat in understanding, which is Bina, which is why Saturn has such a heavy influence over Earth. Now, I'll be honest, I read this already, but it just dawned on me, because that was one of the things I would consistently research, is why it's always said that Saturn has such a heavy influence over Earth. Saturn being time, I guess, for lack of a better word, or the law, a greater law as opposed to the law of Mars. Constriction, discipline, separate. All right. So let's see. In one esoteric text, this mode of intelligence is said to have its seat in understanding. And understanding is the number 3, which is Bina, or sanctifying intelligence. What is meant is that in order to have the resplendent, glowing consciousness of mastery, one must also, as a basis, the sanctifying, perfecting, organizing power of understanding. Be discerning with me. Our citizenship in the kingdom of heaven on earth is determined by the degree of our understanding. Once you reach that understanding, you will see everything is happening that's supposed to be happening. One thing stinking is your thinking. Such is the outline of the 10 primary numbers according to ageless wisdom as handed down to us through the sages of Israel. It affords a basic clue to the meaning of Torah. For instance, the whole book or pack of cards, because Torah is called the word book, word roll, or another word of book. It's called the book of tea, which is the book of thought. I think it's quite interesting that we discussed thought so far. All right, let's see. Let's get back to the book. Okay, for instance, the whole book or pack of cards contains 78 pages. Interpreting the number 78 from the foregoing, we see it represents the expression of splendor of the perfect intelligence 8 through the victory of occult intelligence 7. Precisely, this is the great purpose of Tarot. I think that's important because we tend to break down single numbers and then we'll condense larger numbers into single numbers. But here you can take the numbers 7 and 8 and you can find the corresponding Tarot cards and you will get a very perfect understanding and meaning right there. In the practical work of the builders of the Adeptium, the esoteric meaning of the numeral symbols have been expanded into a series of 11 statements or affirmations. These are entitled the pattern on the trestle board, because while they are at all times true of the real self at the heart of every human personality, they are not intended to be taken as vainglorious claims to personal attainment. They will aid the reader to remember the main attributions of the numbers 0 to 10. That's 10, not 11, not 9. More than this, they have, during the last 25 years, proved their value as seed ideas which planted in the mind by thoughtful and purposeful repetition bear rich fruit in mental and spiritual unfolding. The pattern on the trestle board. This is the truth about self. 0. All the power that ever was or will be is here now. 1. I am a center of expression for the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. 2. Through me, its unfailing wisdom takes form in thought and word. 3. Filled with understanding of its perfect law, I am guided moment by moment along the path of liberation. 4. From the exhaustless riches of its limitless substance, I draw all things needful, both spiritual and material. 5. I recognize the manifestation of the undeviating justice in all the circumstances of my life. 6. In all things, great and small, I see the beauty of the divine expression. Living from that will, supported by its unfailing wisdom and understanding, mine is the victorious life. I look forward with confidence to the perfect realization of the eternal splendor of the limitless life. He's dropping jewels. It's almost poetic. It's almost poetic. 8. I look forward with confidence to the perfect realization of the eternal splendor of the limitless life. 9. In thought and word and deed, I rest my life from day to day upon the sure foundation of eternal being. 10. The kingdom of spirit is embodied. The kingdom of spirit is embodied in my flesh. He just walked us through all 10 sephiroth verbally. If that ain't power, I don't know what is. Now here we are. Construction of the Tarot. Now I'm sorry, you guys. We've been getting down for 2 hours and I'm only on page 16. I will do better. I will do better. I have 2 more hours to devote to this, more or less. So I'm going to try to save some of the commentary and progress. The Tarot is a book disguised as a pack of cards. 56 of its 78 pages are called minor trumps. You know what? I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to take advantage of something I wanted to do, which is to show this book. Money Magic by Jade. And if you've been in these circles for a while, you've probably heard that book. It's a book of rituals to get money, which is one of the 3 reasons why everybody embarks on this path of magical occultism, mysticism, whatever you want to call it. That path usually stems from one of 3 things: health, wealth, sex. And actually we can say wealth, health, and sex, probably in that order, or sex, health, and wealth, whatever. But yeah, that's what it is. Money Magic by Jade. Now I said I wouldn't deviate for much longer, so that's why I wanted to get this out the way. If you've been following my YouTube channel, you know that I intend to give away this book. So, if you happen to be 2 hours and 7 minutes and 57 seconds in with me, comment wealth, health, and sex, and I'm going to get at you and I will mail you that book. Now this book is small, but the price range usually goes, depending on availability, you'll see it as high as $400. I happened to get those copies for $10. I caught them on Amazon. There was like one of those little fluky things where it was for sale. For sale at a lower price, I bought 4 or 5. And I had this ultimate plan. I was going to sell them for extra buckerthons. But in the end, I'm not that kind of guy. So what I'm going to do is, first person to comment health, wealth, and sex in the comment section, I'm going to get at you, give me your address, I'm going to mail you that book, free of charge. Alright, let's get back to chapter 3, page 16. Construction of the Tarot. The Tarot is a book disguised as a pack of cards. 56 of the 78 pages are called minor trumps. These are divided into 4 suits, 4 worlds, distinguished by emblems like those on Spanish or Mexican playing cards. The names of the suits are scepters or wands, cups, swords, coins or pentacles. Now remember, we went over that in the associations in the first video. If you're a newbie, go back to the first tarot correspondence video, and there's an in-depth explanation of those. In the 17th century, French card makers altered the original suit emblems to clubs, hearts, spades, and diamonds, familiar to everyone, and that's why I have this book. Basically, the suits represent the four worlds or four planes mentioned in chapter 1. The wands, clubs, correspond to the archetypal world, the element of fire, and to I in the IHVH. The cups, hearts, correspond to the creative world, to the element of water, to the first H in IHVH. The swords, spades, correspond to the formative world, to the element of air, and to the V in IHVH. The coins or pentacles, diamonds, correspond to the material world, to the element of earth, and correspond to the second H in IHVH. In each suit are 10 minor trumps numbered consecutively from ace to 10. Thus, the meaning of any numbered card in the minor trumps may be determined by combining the meanings of the number with the characteristics of the world it represented by its suit. All the twos, for example, suggest duplication, alternation, and the like. And every one of them has some relation to the idea of wisdom, so with the other numbered cards. So this book is a reference. If you go back, if you get a copy of this book and you're learning tarot like I am, go back, and if you lay out a spread, you can see that the Ace of Wands will correspond to the archetypal world, element of fire, and the I or the Yod in Yod He Vav He. Besides the number cards, every suit of minor trumps contains 4 court cards. Instead of the 3 found in the modern pack of playing cards, they are King, symbol of spirit, the essential self in man; Queen, symbol of soul, the inner pattern part of a particular human personality; Knight, symbol of that particular focus of energies and of the personal sense of selfhood, which constitutes the ego seated in the heart of a particular human personality; Page, symbol of body, the personal vehicle of a particular human being; the King of Wands in this idea of spirit; the Queen of Wands, the idea of soul; the Knight of Wands, the idea of personal energies and the idea of what may be called egoity; the Page of Wands, the idea of body. Similarly, court cards of cups symbolize the patterns of spirit, soul, personal energies in the body. Those of swords stand for the processes requisite to the manifestation of spirit, soul, personal energies, and body. Those of coins or pentacles represent the actualized manifestation of spirit, soul, personal energies, and body in a particular human being. The more important part of the tarot with which this book is mainly concerned consists of 22 cards called major trumps. These are pictures numbered consecutively from 0 to 21. Every major trump has a special title which affords an important clue to its meaning. In addition, every major trump corresponds to one of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. This alphabet differs from others in that every letter has a name. These 22 letter names are Hebrew nouns, and every one of them designates some familiar natural object. They follow one another in logical sequence, bringing to mind's eye a series of pictures. These pictures call up in every human mind, irrespective of race, certain basic associations of ideas. Hence, in studying any major trump of the tarot, we begin with the mental image called up by the name of the Hebrew letter to which it corresponds. In addition to the clues afforded by the numbers and titles of the major trump cards or keys, and by the associations of ideas suggested by the letter names, we find others derived from certain traditional occult interpretations of the Hebrew letters. These are given in ancient volume of Kabbalistic wisdom. The name of this book is the Sefer Yetzirah, or Book of Formation. From it are taken all occult attributions of the Hebrew alphabet given herein, with the exception of the attributions of the sun, moon, and planets to the 7 letters technically known as doubles, because each of them has a hard and a soft pronunciation. In all ancient copies of the Book of Formation, the planetary attributions to the double letters are purposefully mixed in order to mislead uninitiated readers into whose hands the book might fall. The correct attributions were reserved for mouth-to-ear instruction. When the first edition of this book was published in 1927, these attributions had never appeared in print outside the writings of the present author, except in one article published in the Occult Review for March 1910, and in certain other publications more or less directly inspired by the author of that article. He received his knowledge from an occult society under seals of secrecy, which he violated by his publications of the true correspondences. He has been followed by other members of the same society who offered the excuse that bad management in the society itself threatened the loss of its knowledge. So you can tell he didn't approve of them joining a society, gaining that information, and just all willy-nilly sharing that information. And that's his preference. Whether this be a valid excuse for breaking a solemn obligation, the reader must judge for himself. But it is only fair to add that the society in question rests under grave suspicion of having acted with considerably less than good faith in opposing obligations to keep secret knowledge, which was by no means its exclusive possession, and to custody of which it had, to say the least, a most dubious title. The present writer worked out the attribution of the planets to the double letters from hints given in the Book of Formation and from the Tarot itself in the year 1907. His knowledge of the attributions was therefore in the nature of a recovery, and he violates no obligation in making it public. So what he's saying is he did the work and he wasn't under any obligation to not do so or to share as such. Although he eventually established an organization, I wonder, I'm definitely going to dive deeper into Bota, Builders Theodetium, to see if he violated his own tenets, which I doubt he did, considering how he felt. Instead of tabulating all the letters and their meanings together, this book will give a separate explanation of every letter in connection with the major trump to which it corresponds. The various meanings and attributions should be read, digested, and elaborated by every student who seeks to arrive at the deeper significance of Tarot. In the first edition of my book, entitled Introduction to the Study of Tarot, the description of the symbolism were based on the Tarot known as the Rider Pack, drawn by Miss Pamela Coleman Smith under the supervision of Dr. Arthur Edward Waite. Dr. Waite had access to many occult manuscripts relating to Tarot. In some of his later writings, he endeavored to throw dust in the eyes of the uninitiated by pretending to believe that the attribution of the cards to the letters exposed by the revelations before mentioned was not the true arrangement. So Waite was attempting to give out this information while holding fast to his obligations, and most likely he figured any real student would notice the deviation or the dust in the eye. Yet his own rectification of the symbolism and numbering of earlier exoteric versions of this picture book of ageless wisdom are sufficient evidence that he understood and accepted the validity of his attribution. For example, in accordance with an old esoteric tradition, he transposed the numbering of the cards named Strength and Justice. Exoteric editions of tarot, current in Italy and France, subsequent to the 18th century, gave the number 11 to Strength and 8 to Justice. In the Rider pack, these numbers were reversed, as they are in tarot packs belonging to certain occult schools. The reason for this is that whatever card is numbered 8 represents the zodiacal sign Leo, and the picture entitled Strength shows a woman taming a red lion. Similarly, whatever card is numbered 11 corresponds to the sign Libra, and the picture entitled Justice shows a woman carrying the scales Libra. So again, any serious student would have noticed and made the adjustment for themselves. Furthermore, a great many details in the 22 major trumps of the Rider pack depend for their meaning on the same attribution of the major trumps to the Hebrew letters. These were pointed out in the first edition of Introduction to the Study of the Tarot. In the present work, the 22 illustrations are reproductions of the tarot keys used by the builders of the Adepts. They were drawn by Jesse Burns Park of Boston under the supervision of the present writer. This was felt to be necessary for two reasons. One, the obscuration of certain details in the symbolism so that the captious critics might find reason for doubting the interpretations. Two, the alteration of other keys so as to make them expressions of Dr. Waite's personal ideas rather than correct statements of their original meaning. So possibly, now that I read on, he's saying that it wasn't so much that he held tight to his obligation, he just had an incorrect understanding. Let's continue. The 12 flaming fruit on the tree behind the male figure in key 6, the lovers, is an example of the obscuration just mentioned. In the Rider pack, it is by no means clear that every one of these is a triple flame. Another such detail is the substitution in key 14 of iris flowers for the rainbow, which, in our version, as in the esoteric versions as yet unpublished, is placed over the head of the angel. To be sure, one who is sufficiently familiar with mythology might see a relation between the flowers and the rainbow goddess Iris. But there can be no question as to the meaning of the bow itself. Keys 4, 13, and 19 of the Rider pack are 4 examples of marked departure from the traditional tarot symbolism. This will be evident to anybody who has opportunity to compare the Rider keys with the crude exoteric designs reproduced in Pappus's book, The Tarot of the Bohemians, or with those published in the same book after designs made by Oswald Worth. Miss Park unfortunately adhered rather closely to the tricks of style used by Miss Smith when the latter drew the Rider pack. In spite of this, she succeeded admirably in executing a set of tarot keys which are explicit in the details of their symbolism. There are no blinds in this version. Every symbol is intended to mean just that, just what it is said to signify in the explanations given in the following chapters. The attribution of the major trumps to the Hebrew alphabet is the crux in tarot study. Eliphas Levi knew it, but could not give it, because he received it from a secret order. He did, however, announce the fact that the major trumps correspond to the Hebrew letters, and then proceeded to give an attribution so patently absurd that one wonders how it ever gained credence. The absurdity consists in putting the picture numbered 0 between those numbered 21 and 22, and 20 and 21. Yet, even this affords a clue to the correct arrangement. Eliphas Levi evidently chose this position for the zero key because the latter was thereby assigned to the only Hebrew letter besides the one to which it rightly belongs, which is a symbol of spirit. So, even though there was a blind, he left the clue. The letter Shin, next to the last in the Hebrew alphabet, has the value of 300. And 300 is the numeration of the Hebrew words R-V-C-H, Ruach, and A-L-H-I-M, Ruach Elohim. The English of these words is life breath of the gods, or spirit of God. Hence, Kabbalists call Shin the holy letter, because its number is the number of the name of the divine spirit. By assigning zero key to this letter, Levi appraised his readers that the Tarot Fool is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. There is, however, another letter in the alphabet which is also a symbol of spirit or life breath, and that is Aleph, the first letter of the series. By attributing the zero trump to Aleph, we put it in its correct place, and then the other tarot keys are brought at once into correct relation to the letters whose occult meanings they symbolize. It is, of course, obvious that in a series of numbered pictures, including 0 and ending with 21, the logical place for 0 is at the beginning of the series. 0 is the mathematical symbol for the no thing, which we are obliged to think of as subsisting before the manifestation of the relative unity or beginning represented by 1. Again, there is a graceful allegory in the introduction to the Zohar, the classic of Kabbalism, which tells how all the letters, beginning with Tav and working backward, I like this story coming up, through the alphabet, came before the Lord to prefer their claims to being accepted as the means whereby he would begin his creation. So all these letters came up and said, hey, God, make me first. One by one they were rejected until the letter Beth was chosen, because being the initial letter of the Hebrew word signifying blessing, it was truly representative of the beneficent character of the whole creation. This same letter Beth is the first letter in the Hebrew text of Genesis. Beth, having been accepted after the rejection of all the letters following it in the alphabetical series, there remained the letter Aleph. So the Lord promised Aleph that as a reward for modesty, it should be forever the first of all the letters and the special symbol of the divine spirit. Here we have additional reason for the attribution of the key number 1, that is the magician, to the letter which has 2 for its numeral value. The subsisting spirit, self-sustained before the beginning of manifestation, is no thing or 0. So also is the sound of the letter Aleph as an unaspirated breath or simple outbreathing, an exhalation. Because God blew into the mouth or the nostrils of Adam. Adam actually got he got O2. He got the exhalation, but it still signifies life, outbreathing. He got the carbon monoxide blew into it, and it still woke his head up. Where was I at? The letter Beth, on the contrary, is a true consonant, and even in English is the initial of the verb began. Aleph and 0 both symbolize the formless spirit. Beth and 1 both stand for the first step in the series of creative activities. Dr. Wake, Manny P. Hall, and some others have objected that this arrangement makes the numbers of the keys and the numbers of the letters conflict. The answer to this is that the numbers printed on the keys have one purpose, while those assigned to the letters have another. Man, this man just took shots at Manly P. Now, wait, I can understand, but he just booked at Manly, so I ain't gonna lie. going to lean towards his understanding, even though I got the ultimate respect for Matthew Resolve. The values of the Hebrew letters are used to determine the numeration of words. The numbers printed on the Tarot keys determine the order of the pictures in the series. What is more, the letter values of the Hebrew alphabet are not serial. From Aleph to Teth, they are digits 1 through 9. From Yod to Zadi, they are reckoned by tens from 10 to 90. And from Kaf to Tav by hundreds from 100 through 400. Thus, the same objection, were it at all valid, would apply to Levi's attribution. And the one thing that they all have in common is the Masonic order. Kind of we all wait, and even Levi, which assign key 1 to Aleph, key 2 to Beth, and so on. This seems plausible on the surface because the series of keys from 1 to 9 then correspond by number to the digit values of the letters from Aleph to Teth. Key 10, were this arrangement correct, would correspond also to Yod, which has 10 for its value. But key 11 would then be assigned to a letter numbered 20. Key 13 to a letter numbered 40, and so on. And then at the end of the series, key 0 is assigned by Levi to a letter numbered 300, while key 21 is attributed to a letter numbered 400. Finally, take a sip of water. Finally, if we use the arrangement given hereafter, the symbols on the pictures do agree, without question. To the occult meaning of the letters to which they are assigned, those meanings do not have to be read into the pictures. Each symbol may be tested by comparison with the researches of the best authorities, from the most ancient writers down to the present. These are universal signs. Their fundamental significance is the same the world over, in all periods of history, in all forms of religion, in all varieties of philosophy. They are, in fact, drawn from the stock images common to all men everywhere, stored in what Dr. Carl Jung calls the collective unconscious. These pictorial images are those we weave into dreams. They are the symbols of poets, dramatists, and novelists, as well as the substance of the visions of seers, prophets, seers, and prophets. Thinking in pictures is the fundamental activity of the human mind. We see it before we say. We see before we say. Words are but labels for man's visual imagery. And what this brings to mind for me is the fact that there's talk of creating like telepathic devices, technology that will read our minds, allow us to read other people's minds. And the hugest hurdle to that is the fact that images constitute words, and words comprise, I guess you could say, thoughts, ideas, or concepts. But we all have different images to relay similar words, concepts, or thoughts. Like if you ask me about mountain, whatever will pop into mind might not be what another person considers to be a mountain, or what pops into their mind is a mountain. A mountain for some people could be a mountain of work, or it could be Mount Kilimanjaro, or the Himalayas, or, you never know. Thus, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, because they are nouns, are actually 22 labels for mental pictures. From the same stock of pictures by association are drawn the occult attributions of the letters and the symbols of the Tarot keys. To make this clear and to establish the correctness of this long hidden attribution of the major trumps to the letters is one of the main purposes of this book. The attribution is as follows. I wrote my key up here on top of mine. This kind of way. So, the Tarot. 0, the Fool Aleph. 1, the Magician Beth. 2, High Priestess Gimel. The Empress Daleth. 3, the Empress Daleth. 4, the Emperor Hay. 5, 5, the Hierophant Vav. 6, the lovers Zain. 7, the chariot Chet. 8, strength Teth. 9, the hermit Yod. 10, the wheel of fortune Kaf. 11, justice Lamed. 12, the hangman Mem. 13, death Nun. 14, temperance Semek. 15, the devil Ain. 16, the tower Pe. 17, the star Zadi. 18, the moon Kof. 19, the sun Resh. 20, judgment Shin. 21, the world Tav. In connection with the following explanation, you will find it useful to arrange the major trumps on the table in the following order: 0, 1 through 7, 8 through 14, 15 through 21. So you basically have 4 succeeding rows. In the first row you have 0. In the following rows you have 1 through 7. Next, this third row you have 8 through 14. And the remaining row will be 15 through 21. In this arrangement, the 0 key is placed above the others to indicate that it precedes the whole series and is not included in the sequence of numbers. The pictures in the top row refer to the powers, potencies. Those in the middle row are symbols of laws or agencies. Those in the bottom row represent conditions or effects. Thus, key 1 is the power which works through the agency, symbolized by key 8, to modify the conditions or effects typified by key 15. Again, key 2 stands for the potencies or principle which operates through the agency, symbolized by key 9, to modify the conditions represented by key 16, and so on through the series. Careful study of this tableau will reveal certain harmonies of numbers which are helpful in getting at the deeper meaning of the keys. For example, the middle card in any horizontal row is the arithmetical mean term between 3 pairs of keys on either side of it. Let me go back. Here's me, oh man, I'm waiting on the book from Amazon. Got my attention diverted. So let's go back. Careful study of this tableau will reveal certain harmonies of number which are helpful in getting at the deeper meaning of the keys. For example, the middle card in any horizontal row is the arithmetical mean term between 3 pairs of keys on either side of it. So the middle row, which is 0, 4, 11, 18. Where was I at? That is key 4. In the top row is the arithmetical mean between keys 1 and 7. And in the top row. Okay, let me go back. That is, key 4 in the top row is the arithmetical mean between keys 1 and 7, 2 and 6, 3 and 5. So, okay, I get it now. I'm tripping. 1 and 7, 2 and 6, 3 and 5. It's the antithesis or the equalizing principle. Similarly, key 11 in the middle row is the mean key between keys 8 and 14, 9 and 13, 10 and 12. On the bottom row, key 18 is the arithmetical mean between numbers 15 and 21, 16 and 20, 17 and 19. So remember at the beginning of the book, he gave the meaning of all the base numbers from 0 to 10. So you can use that, especially even with the double letters, to come to a deeper understanding of the number cards, as well as the Hebrew letters, which are actually numbers as well. In like manner, every key in the middle row is the arithmetical mean between the key above it in the tableau and the key below it. Thus, 8 is the mean between 1, 15, 9. So 8, okay. So we look at the same through these numbers. We look at them horizontally as well as vertically. In this tableau, therefore, key 11 stands as a mean between 10 pairs of keys. 11 is the middle part between 10 pairs, and those pairs are 1 and 7, 2 and 6, 3 and 5, 8 and 14, 9 and 13, 10 and 12. These are 1 and 20. Oh, well, hush. All right. Okay. These are 1 and 21, 2 and 20, 3 and 19, 4 and 18, 5 and 17, 6 and 16, 7 and 15, 8 and 14, 9 and 13, and 10 and 12. The members of these 10 pairs stand in diametrically opposed positions in the tableau, and key 11 is at the center of the whole scheme, where it is obviously a symbol of the agency which affects balance and equilibrium. 11 would evoke the image of the twin pillars of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Among all the forces symbolized by the keys, careful inspection of the 22 keys laid out in this tableau will reveal many other interesting and enlightened correspondences. It will also make clear the principle of antithesis utilizing in designing the keys. The principle may be observed also by comparing the letter names of the Hebrew alphabet. It is applied consistently throughout the series and confirms the fundamental laws of human thought. For instance, in the top row of the keys, a male figure, the magician, stands outdoors in a garden. In key 2, the central figure is a virgin priestess sitting inside a temple. Key 3, by contrast to the virgin high priestess, is a pregnant woman sitting in the garden. Key 4 is her consort, clad in armor, sitting on a height with the river that waters his wife's garden far below. Key 5 contrasts to the power of the church, designated in the esoteric title as the Pope, with the power of the state symbolized by the emperor. Key 6 is, in contrast to key 5, an outdoor scene, suggesting that the untutored innocence of Adam and Eve in the garden. Key 7 has in the background a city, and all the rest of the symbolism is made up of the details having to do with the relatively advanced stage of civilization. Bear this principle of antithesis in mind. As applied to tarot, it means that any tarot key is in direct contrast to one which immediately precedes it. So that brings to mind Kabbalah, because the Sephiroth above is considered positive to the one below, and the one below a Sephiroth is considered negative to the one above. To what then is key 0 in contrast? Or I left myself a written note. Oh, what I just said. Similar to Kabbalah, that the Sephiroth is negative in relation to the one above it and positive to the one below it. So to what then is key 0 a contrast? To what else but key 21? The last card. For the very word tarot is an artificial word made up of the letters of the Latin noun rota, R-O-T-A, written around a circle, as indeed you may see by inspecting key 10. Start at the bottom of the wheel with R and go around the wheel clockwise, and the 4 letters spell rota. Begin at the top, follow around the wheel in the same direction, and the 4 letters spell tarot. Go on from 0 to your starting point, and you come to T again and spell out tarot. The tarot then is a symbolic wheel of human life. We might indeed arrange these 22 pictures in a circle with the keys equally spaced, like figures on a clock face. Then, when we had gone round the circle from 0 to 21, we should, in completing the circuit, arrive at 0 again. This is an important clue to some of the deeper meanings of tarot. ponder it well, and from within you will come more light than we can shed in page after page of explanation. Alright, we're finally getting some traction. I'm sorry it took 2 hours and 44 minutes to read 28 pages, but hold on. Okay, here we have the fool. And we see here the fool, same image I have over here. He has his wallet or his bag. It has an eagle on it. The all-seeing eye. He has his wand. Wand is synonymous with fire. He has the single feather, the rose. He has his rose with the wheel of fortune on it. We know that the inside of his robe is red. He has the dog at his feet, the precipice, number 0, the fool, Aleph. IV, page 29, key 0, the fool, Aleph. Aleph is the Hebrew equivalent for the English A. Its numerical value is 1. In Roman characters used for transliterating Hebrew words throughout this book, its name is ALP, meaning bull or ox. This is believed by many to establish the time of the invention of the alphabet as being during the astronomical period called the Taurian Age, when the bull was the god symbol dominant in the leading religions of the world. Apis in Egypt, Mithra among the Persians, Dionysus among the Greeks, all had the bull or ox as a symbol. Since oxen pulled the plow and threshed the grain in primitive husbandry, besides pulling the carts which carried the farmer's produce to market, they became symbols for the motive power in agriculture. Agriculture is the basic form of civilization. Thus, the ox represents power at work in all forms of human adaptation and modification of natural conditions. Oxen again are symbols of wealth, as our own English adjective peculiary, derived from the Latin pecus, cattle, clearly shows. Finally, oxen and bulls the world over represent creative energy, life power, the vital principle of plants, animals, and men, which comes to us in physical form as the light and heat of the sun. The Hebrew name for this vital principle is Ruach, RVCH. Its literal basic meaning is breath. It is equivalent to English spirit, Latin spiritus, Greek pneuma, Sanskrit prana. All these words mean air or breath. They all designate the all-pervading cosmic energy which animates every living creature. This Ruach is specifically attributed to the letter Aleph in the Kabbalistic Book of Formations. Fiery or scintillating intelligence in the mode of consciousness assigned to Aleph. Breath keeps a flare of light in our bodies. In both Old and New Testaments, we are told the Lord our God is a consuming fire. To define the primal mode of the life power, the first aspect of the cosmic vital principle, is impossible. Yet wise men have ever agreed that it is like fire. And the most recent discoveries of modern physics demonstrate the fact that the something whereof all things are made is a radiant fiery energy. Occultism adds the thought that this energy is the working power of pure consciousness, which plays upon that energy, is inseparable from it, and directs all of its manifestations from within. This idea of inherent directing consciousness, combined with current scientific explanations of the electromagnetic constitutions of matter, gives precisely the conception which Kabbalists convey by the term scintillating intelligence. In the color scale used by some Western schools of occult science, the element of air and the fiery life breath are represented by a clear, pale shade of yellow. Remember, the Fool card is saturated in yellow. Since the discovery of the planet Uranus, the higher octaves of Mercury, this This planet has been attributed to Aleph and is represented by the pale yellow tint just mentioned. Its tone vibrations seem natural. The planetary name Uranus, it should be noted, is the English adaptation of the Greek word meaning sky. I think it's better to consider Uranus not as a planet, but as a god archetype. Remember, Uranus is a god. Furthermore, those who believe with the present writer that all language and, in consequence, all accepted scientific nomenclature is an evolutionary process having its origin in the universal mind may reach the conclusion that the noun uranium, derived from Uranus, is by no means a chance designation for the chemical element whence are derived the thought, design, and man-made elements Neptunium and Plutonium. So we think these names and things are random, but they're not. They're not. They come from the one mind, from the all. Those terrible sky powers, which is what uranium, plutonium, and Neptunium for bombs, which appear at present to threaten the extermination of humanity in a frenzy of insane suicide. Yet these same powers might, if rightly applied, so change our globe that it will become a veritable planet paradise. Ageless wisdom, in spite of all appearance to the contrary, holds fast to the conviction that the directing intelligence will so work itself out in human thought that new constructive uses for the sky power, going far beyond what most of us can now imagine, will bring a fulfillment, the ancient promise of a new heaven and new earth, people by regenerating humanity. Well, it hasn't happened yet, but I will say that from his time to now, there are clear evidences of advancements. Maybe not in how people treat people, but even technology-wise, we know that none of this stuff is new under the sun. There's nothing new under Tiferet. Nothing new under Tiferet. The zero key elaborates the occult meaning of Aleph. Its number identifies it with the no thing, whence all things proceed. The Kabbalists call this limitless light in connection with Aleph. The Kabbalists called this limitless light. In connection with Aleph, we find this light represented as the active principle of existence prior to actual manifestation. The picture of the fool, therefore, does not show this principle as it really is, because the absolute transcends finite comprehension. I'm going to read that again. The picture of the fool, therefore, does not show this principle as it really is, because the absolute transcends finite comprehension. Yet the symbol shows it as it has revealed itself in a measure to the wise. The fool is pictured as a youth because we are obliged to think of the absolute in terms of our own experience. To our minds, the life breath presents life in the human form. But behind this personal seeming, sages discern something higher, typified in the picture by the white sun. This higher something is an impersonal power, manifesting as the limitless energy radiating to the planets of world systems without number, streaming to them from their respective suns. In manifestation, this energy is temporarily limited by living organisms. Of these, the primary class is the vegetable kingdom, represented by the green wreath which binds the fool's fair hair. In manifestation, this energy is temporarily limited by living organizations. So the green wreath on the fool's head represents a limitation of living organisms. There's so much you can aspire to or achieve in the flesh, because the fool is descending deeper in the matter. Of these, the primary class is the vegetable kingdom, represented by the green wreath which binds the fool's fair hair. The hair itself is yellow, symbolizing the radiant energy of the life breath. The higher class of organism is the animal kingdom, evolved from the vegetable world, and represented here by the red feather rising from the wreath. This feather is also a symbol of aspiration and truth. The color of wreath and feather, green and red, are complementary as the kingdoms they symbolize. So the green and red, these are pictures of different kingdoms and worlds, especially if you follow. The cosmic life breath is forever young, forever in the morning of its power, forever on the verge of the abyss of manifestation. We see why the fool is right there. It's forever becoming, forever young, forever on the verge of the abyss of manifestation. It is neither male nor female. Hence, this gay young traveler's figure might be either a lad or a girl disguised like Rosalind. Actually, it is the heavenly androgyne. Always it faces unknown possibilities of self-expression, transcending any height it may have reached at a given time. On this account, the sun behind the traveler is at an angle of 45 degrees. I didn't peep that. As Swedenborg says, the celestial sun remains forever in the spiritual world. The spiritual sun never reaches the zenith. From the zenith, it would have to descend. And the idea here intended is that infinite energy never can reach a point in manifestation whence it must begin to decrease in power. On this account, too, the fool faces northwest, toward a direction which, for Masonic and other occult reasons, has for millenniums been symbolic of the unknown and of the state just prior to the initiation of a creative process. And that definitely rings true for me, because as a Master Mason, I understand that the Northwest does represent the beginning of an initiatic journey. The traveler's eager gaze is fixed rapturously on a distant height, beyond and above him. He is that which was and is and shall be, the deathless, faceless life principle, subsisting eternally behind all modes of existence. His inner robe is a dazzling white, representing the light of perfect wisdom, dimly traced in the folds at the neck of his white garment are the Hebrew-led characters of the divine name, IHVH, Jehovah. This name, according to Kabbalists, is represented by the three parts of the Hebrew characters for the letter Aleph. The white undergarment is almost wholly concealed by the black coat of ignorance. The white undergarment is almost wholly concealed by the black coat of ignorance, lined with the red of passion, fire, and material force. So innocence, knowledge, purity, all of that is clothed in ignorance. I guess that makes sense, because at the beginning of this journey here on earth, you are born with I won't say a lack of knowledge of self, but a lack of memory of from whence you came and what you came here to do. So I can rock with that. The outer garment is embroidered with what seems to be a floral decoration, but the unit of design, repeated 10 times, is a yellow wheel containing 8 red spokes. Around this wheel are 7 green trefoils. The yellow color of the wheel represents air or breath. The 8 red spokes combine the number 8, symbol of rhythm. With the color red, and refer to the rhythmic action of the fiery activity which sets the life breath into whirling motion. The 7 trefoils are green, the color of organic life in the vegetable kingdom, and particular color of the planet Venus in color symbolism. Each trefoil represents one of the 7 spirits of God and one of the 7 great rays of the universal creative energy. They are trefoils because every one of these 7 force rays has a triple expression: integrating, equilibrating, and disintegrating. There are 10 repetitions to this unit of design to refer to the ancient doctrine that all manifestation is in 10 aspects or phases, 10 effable enumerations, 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11, as the Book of Formation says. In one of these wheels, near the bottom of the fool's coat, is placed the Hebrew character for the letter Shin. This refers to the connection between the letters Aleph and Shin, which are both alphabetical symbols of the fiery life breath, or Holy Spirit. In addition to these 10 wheels, there is on the right breast of the fool a yellow circle enclosing a triple flame of red. This represents the state of the life breath prior to manifestation. When the universal energy, yellow disc, although it has triple potency of expression, the triple potency would have to be the upper triad, within itself, has not yet organized that potency into the rhythmic whirling motion which is the basis of all modes of expression. On the fool's left shoulder is a golden 8-pointed star. Close to it is a silver lunar crescent. These are the sun and moon, or silver and gold, of the alphabets. They also refer to Surya, the hot electric solar current of prana described in books on yoga, and to Raya, the cool magnetic lunar current of the same prana. Fundamentally, these are 2 modes of the life breath. Their activity is both universal and personal. In humanity, they are active in the nerve currents of the physical body. The black wand over the fool's right shoulder is a measuring tool. It supports a wallet, having a flap sewn with 10 stitches. The lock of this flap is in the form of an eye. On the wallet, below the flap, is a picture of an eagle. The wand is a symbol of will, of which attention, the wand itself, is the essence, and to which memory, the wallet, is closely linked. So will and attention I would say just offhand, again, it's pointing to recalling from whence you came, from knowing that you are spirit slowed down to the lower vibration of the lower dense vibration of materiality, but you have to have the willpower to climb back up from whence you came. This wallet is in the form of an eye, which stands for the all-seeing eye of Freemasonry, and for the eye of Horus in Egyptian symbolism. It suggests that through the development of a higher type of vision, we may gain access to the treasure of stored up experience in universal memory. The 10 stitches on the flap have the same meaning as the 10 wheels on the fool's coat, and refer to the 10 types of vision or higher perception developed by occult practice. The eagle on the water refers to the zodiacal sign of Scorpio. Thus, it intimates that the wand and wallet together may be understood to be phallic symbols, referring to the natural process whereby the accumulated experience of the life power is passed on from cycle to cycle through an endless chain of living organisms. In occultism, however, the awakening of the higher vision symbolized by the eye on the flap of the wallet is brought about by practices which redirect and sublimate the bodily forces related astrologically to the sign Scorpio. The rose in the fool's left hand is white to indicate freedom from the lower forms of desire and passion, and also to show that it refers to the spiritual prototype of desire. It is a cultivated flower, showing, as do other details of the fool's vesture and equipment, that he has come from a previous scene of cultural activity, from a plane somewhere behind him on his journey. 4, as corresponding to Aleph, the fool symbolizes cultural activities. At the waist, the robe is encircled by a girdle having 12 circular ornaments, of which 7 are visible. It refers to the 12 signs of zodiac, through which are expressed the powers of the 7 heavenly bodies known to the ancients. Oh, okay, I get that. Thus, the girdle typifies time, and since the belt must be removed in order to take off the black coat, here is a plain intimation that to rid ourselves of ignorance and passion, we must overcome the illusion of time, which is, as Kant long ago proved, purely a creation of the human intellect. A practical occultist learns to replace time by eternity, and practices daily to accustom himself to leading a timeless life. Something I'm guilty of. Time. I'm constantly restricting myself. My belt is on firmly. I mean, I take it off, but I need to get in the habit of reminding myself to replace time with eternity, because I have all the time that I need right now. The citrine or olive of the fool's hose, the 10th varies in various versions of the Tarot, refers to the element of earth, and to the 10th numeration or aspect of the life power, which Kabbalists call the kingdom. Yeah, also be the 2 pillars, but yes, we can rock with that. His yellow shoes refer to the element of air, which is the vehicle, the life power. So he's stepping light. Travel light, he's stepping light. The icy peaks in the distance show that the cold, abstract principles of mathematics are above and behind all the warm, colorful, vital activities of cosmic manifestation. The little white dog is a descendant of wolves and jackals. Thus, he is a human adaptation whereby something given in a wild and dangerous state by the unmodified processes of nature has been changed into a friend, helper, and companion of men. He also indicates the truth that all subhuman forms of the life power are elevated and improved by the advance of human consciousness. Finally, for symbolic reasons, going back to ancient Egypt, he is a symbol of intellect, subordinate to superconsciousness. The fool then symbolizes what Dr. Waite in his key to the Tarot calls the state of the first emanation. He is the primary aspect of universal consciousness, which we term superconsciousness. He is the cosmic life breath about to descend into the abyss of manifestation. Because he symbolizes the state of life power just prior to the beginning of a cycle of self-expression, he also represents inexperience. For until the life power actually enters into the particular activities of such a cycle, it can have no real experience of those activities. It is because of this inexperience that the subtle wise men who invented Tarot called this key the fool. Another reason was that they were familiar with the philosophic truth that superconsciousness is above reason, imagination, thought, feeling, and all other states of self-consciousness. So that's to say that this superconsciousness is so far beyond our mode of thinking that it's going to seem foolish, backwards, upside down, etc., etc., etc. The mystical theology of Dionysus therefore says of God, he has neither imagination nor reason, nor does he know anything as it is, nor does anything know him as he is. Apply these words to a man, and you call him a fool. Furthermore, the attempt to limit divine consciousness to a personality, making God a big man, is mentally to create a foolish divinity. Finally, the title of the zero key refers to that foolishness of God which is wiser than men. This means that although superconsciousness has no actual experience of those facts and events which are the warp and woof of human knowledge, its inherent awareness of the principles of its own nature far transcends the limits of human wisdom. I'll stop here because I am constrained by the shackles of time. I gotta get my kids a little bit. But what I wanted to do was just to kind of wrap up these last few little thoughts. Although the fool is embarking on a journey, and it seems quite foolish to say the least, we do know that the fool still has an inherent or intuitive wisdom and knowledge of what's to come, which is why he can walk in faith. You know? So, thank you for riding out with me. I'm going to use this magician card as my next bookmark. I'll read this before I get out again, which hopefully I did want to run through this whole book today. So what I'm going to try and do is tonight get back on for another 3 hours, and this time less commentary, more reading. So I just want to say thank you for hanging out for Occult Topics with the Professor. If you haven't already, by the end of these 3 hours and 10 minutes, hit the like button and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you were feeling, what you weren't feeling. If you're an adeptus majus of the highest degree, tap in and let me know where I might have went wrong or where I might be assuming something differently. I'm open to it. Again, I am the eternal student. So thank you again for tuning in to Occult Topics with the Professor. Namaste, but not in the sense of a yoga pants wearing Karen. I'm saying that the God in me recognizes the God in you, and that we are one, and we are going to achieve this oneness together. It may seem separately, but this is the nature of evolution of the species and consciousness. So, thank you again for your time, and I'll see you soon, hopefully tonight. I'm thinking tonight what I'll do is, once the house settles down, everybody goes to sleep, we'll break this back out, because Sunday we are going to dive into the magician card and get started there. Even though in this book we're already at the magician, but I do want to keep flowing and rolling in terms of the two different tarot cards, at least in the 22 major arcana. And if I have to, take my time reading this, and we'll still roll with the different cards at least one a week. So again, man, thank you. And let me say this. If you haven't purchased a copy of my book, The Occult Meaning of Masonry and Symbols in the Chakra System, you'll find the link to that in my bio, and you'll find that a lot of what we're reading and discussing, I did touch on, and so now I'll be able to bring a deeper level and layer of understanding to all of that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Peace.